Welcome to my channel. Here, we share inspiring stories of brave and strong people. Maybe you'll see yourself or someone you know in these stories. Thank you for watching. In the remote mountains of Montana, Ironwood Valley hides more than it seems. When a ruthless Mexican cartel targets a quiet farm, they believe they're intimidating a simple rancher. They couldn't be more wrong. Eli Kane, a former Delta Force operative known as Phantom, spent decades mastering the art of war. With his loyal German shepherd, Shadow, and an elite team of old comrades, Eli transforms his land into a battlefield. This isn't just a fight for survival, it's a calculated takedown of an entire cartel operation. Over 5 days, Eli uses his tactical genius and the valley's rugged terrain to teach his enemies a deadly lesson. Some soldiers may retire, but they never lose their edge. Leave a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. If you enjoy stories like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey tomorrow. The morning mist clung to Ironwood Valley, muffling the world in silence. Eli Kane adjusted his hat, stepping into the chilled air with Shadow at his side. The German shepherd sniffed the ground, ears twitching. Something wasn't right. Eli's boots crunched against the gravel as his sharp eyes scanned the landscape. By the fence line, he froze. Deep grooves in the dirt told a story: heavy tires, wide spacing, fresh. They hadn't been there yesterday. He knelt, brushing a gloved hand across the track. Shadow growled low, his body rigid with tension. "Stay sharp," Eli muttered. His voice, though calm, carried an edge that Shadow seemed to understand. The distant hum of an engine broke the stillness. Growing louder, a silver truck rolled up the gravel path, kicking dust into the air. Sarah Cooper leaned out of the window, her expression tight. "You heard about the Millers?" she asked as she stepped out, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli straightened, brushing dirt from his hands. "What about them?" "Gone," she said grimly. "Left everything behind. Same with the Hendersons last week. It's the cartel. People are saying they're expanding, taking land. Or worse." Eli stayed silent, his gaze drifting to the tire tracks. Sarah hesitated. "Look, I know you like to keep to yourself, but they've got resources. People who push back disappear." Eli finished, his tone flat. She nodded. "Just be careful. Okay?" Eli gave a slight nod, watching as she climbed back into her truck and drove off. Shadow sat beside him, tail still. Eli's eyes lingered on the tracks. Something stirred beneath the calm exterior, a shift no one could see. "Not this land," he muttered. Shadow growled in agreement. The midday sun bore down as Eli worked the field with Shadow nearby. The low growl of approaching engines snapped his attention toward the road. 3 black SUVs crept up the gravel path, their glossy surfaces cutting against the dusty landscape. Shadow barked sharply, pacing at Eli's side. "Easy, boy," Eli murmured, setting his shovel upright in the dirt. His gaze locked on the vehicles as they rolled to a stop. The first door opened, and a man in polished boots and a crisp shirt stepped out. Victor Reyes. Eli clocked him immediately, calculated swagger. Unbuttoned jacket exposing the butt of a pistol at his side. 2 others flanked him, their silence more threatening than words. "Mr. Kane," Victor said, flashing a tight smile. "What a nice place you've got here." Eli leaned on the shovel, his face blank. "Something I can help you with?" Victor gestured to the land with a casual sweep of his hand. "Beautiful property. Lots of potential. My associates and I are looking to expand some operations. And we think your land fits perfectly. Not interested. Eli replied, his tone even. Victor's smile tightened. You should think carefully before saying no. Opportunities like this don't come often. Eli's eyes didn't waver. Oh. I have. The silence that followed felt heavy, broken only by the scuff of Victor's boots as he stepped closer. His men shifted, hands lingering near their belts. Eli noticed every movement, positions, posture, weapons concealed poorly beneath shirts. Victor exhaled, stepping back with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Think it over. I'd hate to see this place go to waste. The SUVs roared to life, dust clouding the air as they disappeared down the road. Eli waited until they were out of sight before heading to the barn. Shadow followed closely as Eli pulled a hidden latch, revealing a staircase that led into darkness. The cellar was cold, lined with shelves of military-grade gear, rifles, explosives, and communications equipment. In the center sat a small wooden box. Eli opened it, pulling out a weathered Delta Force patch marked Phantom. His jaw tightened as he set it aside and began assembling his weapons. They made a mistake, he muttered, locking a magazine into place. Shadow barked once, the sound echoing in the quiet cellar. Eli sat at his kitchen table, a burner phone in his hand. Shadow lay at his feet, ears twitching at every distant sound. The first call went out to Knox, the sniper. You said you were done. Knox's voice came through, low and sharp. I thought I was, Eli replied. But they brought the fight here. Can you be here by sundown? A pause. Already packing. The next calls followed quickly. Cyrus, the demolitions expert, answered with a curt where and when. Zane, the communications specialist, agreed with no hesitation. Doc Nash, the medic, was last. You sure about this, Eli? Nash asked. Eli's tone was steady. They won't stop unless we stop them. By nightfall, the team assembled in the barn, each carrying duffel bags heavy with gear. Knox scanned the area, taking in the terrain with a practiced eye. Good high ground on the ridge, he said. Perfect for overwatch. Cyrus examined the fence line. We'll funnel them through here. Tripwires and charges should do the trick. Zane unpacked his equipment, setting up a makeshift command center on the workbench. I'll jam their comms, but I need to keep one channel open to listen in. Nash checked his medical supplies, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension. Let's hope I don't need to use these. Their planning was interrupted by the sound of a truck pulling up. Sarah stepped out, her face tense. What's going on? Eli, she demanded. Eli stepped outside to meet her, his frame blocking the barn door. It's better if you don't know too much, Sarah. For your own safety. Her eyes narrowed. Don't give me that. People are disappearing. And now there are strangers on your property? I deserve an explanation. Eli hesitated, then softened his tone. I'm taking care of it. Trust me. Inside the barn, Zane's laptop chimed. Got something, he said, drawing everyone's attention. He played an intercepted transmission. A voice came through, calm and menacing. El Fantasma will be there by sunrise. Make sure it's ready for him. Eli's jaw tightened as he glanced at his team. Then we've got until morning to turn this place into a fortress. Shadow barked once, and the team got to work. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel, it means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. The first SUV hit the tripwire, detonating in a blinding flash. By the time the second driver slammed the brakes, Knox's shot had already shattered the windshield. The vehicle veered off the gravel path, crashing into a ditch. First two down. Knox's voice crackled through the comms from his perch on the ridge. They're scrambling. Victor Reyes, sitting in the third SUV, ducked as the deafening explosion shook the ground. Move! Keep moving, he barked, shoving the driver forward. The remaining vehicles accelerated, their tires spinning through the loose dirt. But Cyrus's handiwork awaited them. Another tripwire snapped, igniting a buried charge that sent shrapnel tearing through the convoy. A fourth SUV flipped, its occupants flung into chaos. Beautiful work, Cyrus. Eli's voice came low and calm over the comms. Knox, pick your targets. Knox lined up another shot. Steady and deliberate. He exhaled slowly, then pulled the trigger. A cartel gunman fell before he could even raise his weapon. They're scattering, Zane reported from his command center in the barn, monitoring the cartel's scrambled radio traffic. They have no idea what hit them. Victor crawled out of his SUV, coughing through the smoke. He grabbed a radio from a fallen gunman and barked into it. Hold your positions. Regroup on me. But the valley was no longer under his control. Cyrus detonated another charge, collapsing the ridge behind the convoy and sealing their escape route. Shadow barked sharply as Eli moved through the underbrush, silent and methodical. They're in the kill zone, Eli muttered. Light them up. Cyrus and Knox unleashed a coordinated assault, explosives and precision fire raining chaos down on the cartel. Men shouted, firing wildly into the shadows. But they were outmatched. Victor stumbled backward, his pistol trembling in his hand. He spun, spotting Eli emerging from the smoke, his rifle aimed with deadly precision. Victor froze, sweat dripping down his face. Who are you? He stammered. Eli's voice was cold. The last man you'll see if you don't run. Victor didn't hesitate. He bolted toward the forest, clutching the radio. El Fantasma. We need reinforcements. They're ghosts, silent. Deadly ghosts. Knox's voice came over the comms. You want me to drop him? Eli? Eli lowered his rifle. Let him go. He'll bring us the real fight. Victor's panicked shouts echoed through the valley as he disappeared into the trees. The remaining cartel forces were in disarray, retreating into the shadows. First wave neutralized, Zane reported. But we've got a problem. El Fantasma's on his way, and he's bringing everything. Eli stood amidst the smoldering wreckage, his expression unreadable. Good, he said simply. Let him come. Shadow barked once, a sharp warning in the stillness. The real battle was just beginning. Helicopter blades cut through the night air as El Fantasma's convoy rumbled into the valley, headlights carving through the darkness. The cartel leader, clad in tactical gear, leaned forward in his seat, a cold smile on his face. Bring everything, he ordered his men. This land will belong to me by morning. From his perch on the ridge, Knox spotted the approaching vehicles through his night vision scope. They're here, he said over the comms. More than a dozen vehicles, and they've got air support. Eli, crouched behind a stack of crates in the barn, nodded to himself. Let's make them regret it. Everyone, stick to the plan. Cyrus, you're up first. Cyrus, hidden in a camouflaged position near the fence line, triggered the first set of charges. Explosions erupted along the road, sending dirt and shrapnel into the air. The lead vehicle swerved, one flipping onto its side as the convoy screeched to a halt. Ambush! Defensive positions, one of the cartel enforcers shouted. But chaos had already erupted. Knox's rifle cracked, taking out 2 gunmen before they could react. 2 down. They're disoriented. El Fantasma stepped out of his armored SUV, scanning the carnage with icy calm. Spread out. Find them and kill them all. His men fanned out, using night vision goggles and advanced equipment. But the valley belonged to Eli and his team. Zane intercepted their communications from his command center in the barn. They're calling for reinforcements. But I've jammed their signal. They're blind and deaf. Shadow barked as Eli signaled his team to shift positions. Stay fluid. Eli ordered. Make them come to us. Gunfire lit up the night as the cartel advanced. But every step forward was met with resistance. Cyrus detonated another charge, taking out a cluster of men near the fence. Knox picked off stragglers, his shots echoing like thunder. El Fantasma's voice roared over the chaos. Push forward. We outnumber them. Eli moved silently through the shadows, taking out enforcers with surgical precision. A knife in the dark. A silenced shot, each move was calculated. Each strike devastating. Near the barn, Nash pulled a wounded cartel member to safety, binding his injuries with quick efficiency. I hope you've got a plan to end this soon. Eli, Nash said over the comms. Eli's voice came back steady. Working on it. Knox, keep them pinned. Cyrus, clear their heavy vehicles. Zane, give me a location on Fantasma. Zane's fingers flew across the keyboard. He's moving toward the southwest quadrant, probably trying to regroup his men. Eli's jaw tightened. I'll handle him. Keep the rest occupied. Shadow stayed close as Eli moved toward the trees, his rifle slung low and his knife ready. He found El Fantasma near a cluster of boulders, flanked by 2 enforcers. Eli stepped into the open. Fantasma. The cartel leader turned, his expression unreadable. You're the Phantom, he said, his voice low. I've heard stories about you. Eli tilted his head. Then you should know how this ends. Fantasma signaled his men, but before they could fire, Eli moved. His blade flashed, taking down the first man in seconds. The second hesitated, a mistake that cost him his life. Now it was just Eli and Fantasma. The 2 circled each other, shadows flickering in the moonlight. Fantasma lunged, swinging a machete. But Eli sidestepped, driving a punch into his ribs. The fight was brutal. Each strike met with precision and force. Fantasma was strong, but Eli was faster, his movements honed by years of combat. Finally, Eli disarmed him, pinning him to the ground with a knife pressed to his throat. This valley is mine. Eli growled. You tell your men. Your bosses. And anyone else who thinks about coming here, ghosts protect this land. And they don't forgive. Fantasma's eyes burned with fury, but he nodded. Eli pulled him to his feet, binding his hands with a strip of cord. Shadow growled low, his teeth bared. Zane, Eli said over the comms. Call the sheriff. We've got a package for him. On it. Zane replied. Back at the barn, the rest of the team regrouped as the remaining cartel forces scattered into the night. Their will to fight broken. Knox exhaled, lowering his rifle. Looks like they got the message. Cyrus smirked. Told you ghosts don't lose. Eli returned, dragging Fantasma behind him. This is over, he said simply. Fantasma glared at him. For now. Eli's gaze hardened. No. It's over. You'll make sure of it. As dawn broke over the valley, The wreckage of the battle lay scattered. But the land stood strong, and so did its defenders. The valley was still. The kind of quiet that came only after a storm. Smoke from the previous night's chaos lingered faintly in the air as the sun rose over Ironwood. Eli stood on his porch, Shadow at his side, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Down the road, Sarah Cooper gathered a small group of neighbors, speaking with purpose. The once timid ranchers and shop owners now carried themselves differently, heads high, eyes sharp. She pointed to the far ridge, explaining new watch routes and how to spot trouble before it arrived. Eli watched her with a faint nod of approval. She had become more than a neighbor, she was now the valley's voice of resilience. Inside the barn, Knox packed his gear, his sniper rifle slung over his shoulder. Cyrus and Zane worked quietly, breaking down equipment and erasing any trace of their operation. Nash cleaned his medical supplies, pausing briefly to glance at Eli. "This place will hold," Nash said, his tone certain. "It will," Eli replied. Rumors had already begun spreading beyond the valley. Tales of invisible defenders, ghosts who appeared without warning and left destruction in their wake, traveled far. No cartel would forget the name Ironwood Valley anytime soon. But Eli knew this was only a reprieve. As his team drove off, blending into the world like shadows, Eli remained behind. He walked the property line, his boots crunching against the dirt. Shadow kept pace, alert to every sound. "They'll come again someday," Eli muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Shadow barked softly, his tail swishing against the ground. Eli adjusted his hat, his eyes scanning the quiet hills. "And we'll be ready." The valley stood as it always had, quiet, resilient, and watched over by the unseen. Ironwood Valley is safe, for now. But Eli Kane knows the shadows always return. What would you do to protect what's yours? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The ghosts of Ironwood Valley are listening. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.